This is the June 26th, 2019 Sustainability Board meeting.
26, 2019 Sustainability Board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Let's open the floor with public comment. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. You must state your name, your city of residence, and you must speak at the podium. Please, the first person, if you'd like to come up front, that'd be great. I thought you came.
She's
Come on.
She looks prepared. She thought she was going to get left at the altar by this Nordic-looking gentleman.
Oh, we got any public comments, sir? No?
Yeah.
Oh, these were them? Okay.
Out of 5.
Yeah. All right, so any public comment for public comments? No? All right. Next order of business. Let's go over the staff update with Nick.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. So being digital today, I'm going to use the online version. So on Thursday, May 29th, here in City Hall Chambers, workshop number 15 was completed, and now is recycling and sustainable products, and we had our best attendance yet. This workshop covered an overview of all the projects currently underway in the city that related to recycling and sustainable products and the future of recycling and sustainable products locally and globally. Other work underway this month. We continued planting as part of our National Estuary Program funded DeSoto Stormwater Enhancement Project. These plantings occurred in the western pond as part of the 3 library ponds. The western pond on the southern side, we planted about 350 Spartina grasses and a couple of mangroves. This is all part of the ADP grant to reduce the impacts of stormwater in our city. Also works towards our green achievement targets. The next one is we continue testing the natural herbicide alternatives to Roundup products that contain glyphosate. We, again, have number 5 as our number 5 bed of the 6 beds that we've been testing. Number 5 is Miramichi, and it's doing the best so far for the cost effectiveness. Also, I attended an internal budget committee meeting, and I learned a lot about our internal workings and how to make those sustainable. Is a lot of fun as well. Public events and meetings. I attended the Patrick Air Force Base Restoration Advisory Board meeting held at in the facility there. It was great. We talked a lot about the different projects that they're doing and the restoration work going on at the base. It's going along well. Some of the projects are completed. Some of them are continuing to be underway. Any cleanup efforts that they talk about, they discuss in detail how those go. John, I don't think you got to make it to that one, did you? I didn't make that. I did see that one. And unfortunately, the Colonel Williams is retiring, so that was his last meeting. He will be missed. He was a real asset to that board. The next was our Sustainability Working Group meeting. That was, unfortunately, I didn't get to attend. However, a few people in the audience did. From what I heard, it was another continuation of projects with Titusville, considering recycling and composting specifically, and creating more of a composting effort in the community. Additionally, I did meet with one of our members to talk about the solar workshop that we're planning as part of the Brevard Sustainability Working Group, and that is also still being developed and looking at October 16th as the date for that one. Let's see what else was there. Dolores Sustainability Board meetings are currently on hold because it's summer and those students have graduated and moved on to Satellite, where they are probably going to join the Satellite Sustainability Board. On June 15th, Sebastian Inland Surf Rider celebrated National Surfing Day. As a surfer, I always like to point these things out. On Friday, June 21st, the Sustainability Board Bike Ride was held. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend in person. Future topics and special presentations, Thursday, August 29th. We will discuss the various activities in the city surrounding the community and how community members can get involved. That will be the next workshop. And classroom presentations on the topic of stormwater, those have also been postponed as the students are no longer in session. The next workshop will be tomorrow, and that is going to be on native plants. So tomorrow here at 7 p.m. in council chambers, we'll be talking about native plants. And then last but not least, little change to the agenda packet there. I got the date wrong. The date is actually July 22nd for the next Brevard Sustainability Working Group meeting, and those are at 9 a.m. on Monday, July 22nd. Just to make sure I get that date correct. Other than that, I'm going to discuss some Earth-friendly community campaigns with Councilwoman Mindy Gibson. Also, the League of Women Voters have been working towards some emergency climate information and creating a letter. And let's see what else there was. Also attended the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council meeting. Again, some of these things take place after the report goes out, so that's why they're not on there. But the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council held a really great meeting in New Smyrna. Julie was there, Lexi was there, Courtney Barker was there, and a number of other, really brilliant people talking about the future of the state and how to plan for resiliency. It was really a privilege to be part of that. I've got to work with a good table of people talking about how they would go about doing that, what mechanisms they would talk about. My particular table talked about gentrification and how to attack climate change through the portal of gentrification, and how if we address this issue, that could be a way to address it. Again, really fantastic, and I'd be happy to talk about anybody with more detail later. Other than that, I did want to follow up on our last meeting and talk a little bit about the Ready for 100. I talked to Zach and did some research, and there wasn't anything formally that we were doing with the Ready for 100. It was more we were talking about it a little bit, and a lot of that came from the actual Sustainability Action Plan that has the goal of 2037 to have clean energy in the city. And that may also have been something with the Climate Mayors Coalition that you all may be thinking of too, that may have something to do with why there was some confusion as to the Ready for 100. But the Ready for 100 resolution is something that, the recommended action to approve the resolution relating to achieving 100% renewable energy by 2050 was something that I wanted to make sure was discussed, and an action was taken on that resolution that I brought forward at the last meeting, because if it gets approved by the board and goes to council for approval, it's something that, will bring a whole new energy that would be rejuvenated by this. It could create new jobs and things within the city that would be beneficial for, not just us as, the people that really care about renewable energy, but also for the rest of the residents that may not be as aware of what we're doing. So that's why I wanted to bring that forward again, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Cool. All right, any further public comment on that?
I just have one thing I want to add to. I'm the alternate for the Florida Green Finance Authority that was established to offer communities and property owners the renewed PACE energy. And we had our quarterly meeting, and they talked about, they only really had one provider that did residential. They did offer commercial solar, but they didn't really push for it. So we had a company apply and send us their, basically their whole awesome presentation about lots of commercial solar projects they've done, and I'm proud to announce that we voted them in the PACE program, and they are extremely excited to get going and get new commercial projects in Florida.
Awesome.
I want to say that in person. I'm really proud.
What is the name?
of the company?
Of the company.
Oh, that's okay. It's called Petro Case. They're actually based out of Texas. I have the packet if anyone wants to
I'd
flip
love to see
through
that.
it.
Yeah, I'd love to see
Sure,
that.
you can pass it down.
I have a quick question. The Brevard Sustainability Working Group, is that no longer at noon? It's on here, it says 9.
Must be a typo.
Okay. Just wondering that.
I had a question for Nick.
Yes.
The double hoagies or doubles.
Oh, yeah.
What's the latest update you have on that place?
So they have completed the roof, they're doing installation, the interior beams are in, they're doing electrical currently right now. They're on target for their different sustainability requirements as far as they have a location selected for the electric vehicle charging station that they're going to have on site. And all the parking spaces, I believe except for maybe the handicap ones, are going to be a permeable surface where it's been dug out for like 2 feet or 2.5 feet, and then some larger rock has been put in, and then that'll be not paved over, but there'll be sediment put in on top of that, so that that'll drain really well on top of those areas, and then that should grow in with either like a grasscrete or something. In addition to that, they just started putting the facade on the front, so if you drive past the front, you'll start to see a little bit of like the wood paneling look coming in. The AC ducts are in. It's coming along real quick, real fast. The retention on the sides, the dry retention areas are all dug. We went over the landscaping plan with them to make sure they're going to do the right plants, and we made a few little adjustments to increase the amount of natives and make sure that they are going to vegetate all the way around some of these dry retention areas. Other than that,
How's the bike parking?
I will check. I'll check the bike park.
Yeah, yeah. I just, it's just a bummer when you have to chain up to a sign. Yeah.
Great question.
Do you know what their straw policy is?
No, they'll have no plastic straws.
Okay.
No plastic utensils, no plastic takeaways. It's
Excellent.
very sustainable as part of their agreement with the city. Should be an easy win for Litter Quitter.
I have a question about the number 5 Miramichi. So remind us, you might have said this, what are the next steps then? That seems to be the most promising.
So I was talking, actually, today I went to IFAS to attend aquatic management and weed management workshop.
Yeah.
It looks like some of the best options are to like rotate your different uses of what you're using. So maybe
Okay.
mechanical, and then Miramichi, and then maybe something else, maybe Spectracide or something. Maybe the horticultural vinegar. Some of these other things that we're working.
Okay.
And then once it gets established, like a nice rotation pattern of your maintenance pattern, but that's still being designed. I think a lot of it is going to take place first with vegetating areas that we can just completely reduce that maintenance on by planting like a roundup tree instead of weed whacking it,
Yeah.
and then maybe planting along the fence lines instead of weed whacking it. So it's kind of identifying those areas.
Okay.
So I'm working with Public Works to do that. Once we identify all those areas, the budget and everything is something that I have to present to get approval for some of those things. But with the Miramichi specifically, we've already ordered it and we're already using it
Okay.
in certain areas to test it out a little more thoroughly.
Right. It's just understanding the sequence and where and when.
Right.
And then maybe long term, it would be kind of a public kind of campaign or something, or just recommendations about that.
The education portion?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's always ongoing.
Right.
So, yeah. But I think the next step is going to be testing out in specific
Yeah.
locations around the city. We started at the community garden in that plot area, and I think we'll just kind of move out from there, and hopefully we can get to the point where, we reduce our costs and
Yeah.
increase our vegetation.
That's great.
Can I just quickly ask Nick about back to double?
Please come to the podium. Thank you.
I just want to quickly ask if with doubles being on the corner, will the backside, the back of the restaurant also be landscaped?
Actually, yes, that's the predominant landscaping is going to be in the back. That's where most of their stormwater and dry retention is. So that's what they're going to vegetate mostly around is those areas. So you'll see if you are on site now, it would be the southwest corner, and then if you follow that around, on their property line, you'll see another ditched area, and those will all have some form of vegetation in them. And that's on the roadside on DeSoto and the roadside on the side street, which,
Yeah, I can't think of the name of what it is either.
right.
One in from.
But then
Urbana.
also more of your ornamental vegetation around the building and around the front as well. So,
Excuse me, ma'am, may I have your name?
Jill Holden.
Thank you very much.
thank you, Jim.
All right, do we have any further public comment? Nope. All right, next order of business, presentation by 321 Millennials.
Hi, everyone. My name's Akela Amara with 321 Millennials. Thank you very much for having us. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background of 321, and then I'll let Shane kind of hop in and explain what our annual project is and what we're hoping you guys will hop on board with this year.
Yes, yeah.
And I have Brian Bobbitt, KBB, really excited to have him here as well. So 321 Millennials is a group of young professionals who has made the community of Brevard their #1 priority, with personal and business goals secondary. We execute this with a 3-tier mission: connect, to provide a platform for individuals to build relationships; culture, to provide millennial values to advance local culture; and charity, to partner with local nonprofits in order to further their mission. 321 was created by 4 young professionals, myself, Shane, and 2 other gentlemen, about 4 years ago. We felt that our community was seriously lacking an organization of young professionals who made the community their #1 priority, but also had an atmosphere where young professionals could learn from each other, grow from each other, and grow with each other. We currently have 7 board members with 2 members on an advisory council. Since our inception, we've partnered with Keep Brevard Beautiful, Bridges Foundation, Brevard Achievement Center, the Haven for Children, Brevard Zoo, Florida Institute of Technology, Lee Brevard, Cocoa Chamber of Commerce, United Way, Friends of Children, Florida Today, the EDC, and so many more. It's really been fulfilling to be a part of the organization for 4 years. We currently have 70 paying members who pay to be part of the Connect portion. We do 1 meeting a month, and it really gives them an opportunity to sit down for lunch and really connect with each other on a more personal level, and they pay $120 a year. So I will let Shane kind of explain how we started the annual project.
Shane Berglund, not a Satellite Beach resident. I reside in Palm Shores. Do you need my address or? So, okay, let's sort of brief you on our organization, 321 Millennials. It is a nonprofit. The initial reasoning behind the organization was more or less networking, but something a little bit different. And over the last almost 5 years, it's evolved into something much more impactful for the county, for our community, and Kansas City culture. We still have a very strong networking presence, but we've decided to really kind of shift our mission statement to something more impactful, and something that we can contribute to our area. So if you look at, I guess it would be page 2, the backside, you see this Nintendo controller rendering, and you see this young gentleman playing on it. This was sort of, I don't want to say a dare, but it was basically Florida Today approached us and said, hey, we have this tech event that we would like you guys to come to, and we want you to contribute something amazing. So we got together and we thought, what do the millennials love the most? It was this Nintendo controller. It was around the same time that Nintendo was releasing that really small console, if anyone remembers that. So we said, let's make a 6-foot controller that's fully functional and allows 2 players to play on it. So we had a rendering, and we partnered with JCOM, and we created it, and it's fully functional. If you go on our website or on our Facebook, you can actually see it in play. We hooked it up to a projector. We had an emulator that actually played the video games through the computer. It was a USB connection. It was very nifty. So that kind of got us thinking about, all right, this is kind of a good start to something. Let's get a little bit more creative and a little bit more impactful. So the following year, this is when we had a few ideas, if you flip the page over, where we presented to our members of the group. So Kayla mentioned we had 70 paying members that are part of our group, part of our organization, and they go to these Connect meetings. These are the people that really direct what 321 Millennials is and what we do and what our mission and cause is. So we spoke with the members and said, what do you guys want to see in the community? They presented a few things about us. We basically gave some parameters that we needed to adhere to. We needed something that was cost effective, so we couldn't go something that was hundreds of thousands of dollars because we're a grassroots organization. It would have been impossible. So we put a parameter on cost. It was $2,000. We scored everything by ease of implementation, meaning can we personally do this, and how many other people do we need to help with it? We talked about time, so we wanted to accomplish it in a calendar year, so it needed to be accomplished by end of 2018. Legalities and liabilities, that's, I mean, without being said, it's basically to protect our industry and our organization. And innovation and creativity, something that is not in the county and something that was fresh. So the winning proposal was basically these fixed art pieces that are cornhole boards. And if you've been in the Eau Gallie Arts District, if you're familiar with that area, you will see metal structures that are located on Highland. It's on the north side of Highland, just across from the Fusner. If you've been there, there are these two metal cornhole boards, 21 feet apart, which is the regulations by the cornhole, there's like officials that actually said this, and we created them, and those are there. We worked with the city, we worked with a metalwork company out of Titusville, and we partnered with MEC, it's an engineering firm in the county. We partnered with Eau Gallie Arts District and Parks and Rec in Melbourne, and made this become a reality. The day that we were doing like a ribbon cutting, it actually was rained out, but we had Kathy Meehan there. Debbie was going to be there. It got rained out, wasn't able to do it, but they are there. They are permanent. The community has reacted extremely well to them. And so that kind of got us rolling into this year. And our 2019-2020 project. So each year on 3/21 is appropriate as the organization 321 Millennials is when we do our annual membership appreciation event, which we also do our voting for our next annual project. And so if you flip the page again, it would be page 4, the back side. We had 4 proposals out there, and basically sent it out to our members to vote on them. One of them was a moving graffiti wall, so to speak. It was an art wall that could be moved along, and it could be used whenever there's a shuttle launch that people could take photos of. There was another one that was a garden that we were going to use one of the facades of a building and create some sort of garden, a community garden. We had these large furniture, so think of a large Adirondack chair and a picnic table. That got us into some liability issues. And then the 4th option was this large recycling receptacle that's located in Indonesia and San Diego, and they call it goby. It's a fish, and if you Google it, I definitely encourage you to do it. Basically what it is, it created these people and encouraged them to want to start recycling. So I think we had a 75% vote rate going for goby, and so that is what you see here in the picture at the top. And so that was what our members voted and what they wanted to see. So after March is when we started doing our homework and saying, all right, we actually need to make this a reality and propose it. And that's why we're here today. We are proposing Satellite Beach. You are the first people that we are proposing this as an option to put a goby. We're calling it Millie, and it will be in the shape of a sea turtle. I've met with Nick Sanzone. We have met with Nick Sanzone. Brian Bobbitt, we actually met at the Wicked Pineapple. I'm wearing a pineapple shirt. I don't know if anyone likes irony, but so we met there. We talked about the idea. Nick seemed very enthusiastic about it, offered so many different ideas about it that we hadn't even thought about. And so our proposal is basically to implement a 10-foot sea turtle that is utilized for recycling purposes at Pelican Beach.
Yeah, this is incredibly exciting. I mean, I saw this at the beginning of the year, sent it over to Nick. I think this is literally like one of the most creative ways to get people engaged with the actual process. I just wish you guys, I didn't even know they were presenting on this. I would have actually liked to film part of this because I'm actually working on a documentary on recycling. And I'd love to include this as an element in that documentary. So
yeah, well, Dylan, you're more than welcome. I mean, if you read some of the bullets on there that I did, talk about why Satellite Beach. If you want to read on that, we wanted a location that was hyper-local. And if you look at all the beaches in the county, I'm a transplant. I'm not from Brevard County, but I think Cocoa Beach we looked at, and that was kind of tossed out just because it's too touristy. But Satellite Beach was ultimately chosen because of the hyper-localness, the spirit of collaboration that Satellite Beach has offered. It's obviously a fantastic location, and there's some phenomenal people on the sustainability board. And then also it's just an opportunity, I think, for Satellite Beach I put world exposure on there, and I'm not exaggerating. I think something like this will pick up such large traction, and it will really put a location like Satellite Beach or Brevard County on the map even more than we already are with everything that is happening in the space industry.
Good question.
Yes,
What's
sir.
the timeline on this?
So we want to complete by December. That is the objective on that.
Ultimately, October
Yeah.
would be our goal. If we could have it built in some sort of ribbon cutting in October, that would be our main
That
goal.
would fit perfectly with the Ocean Reef Beach that occurs the first Saturday in December, I believe.
Which I think is what we actually spoke at our second meeting, so we also met at Grills. If you look at my underwear, I'm just kidding. I don't have Grills underwear on. But that was the second meeting that we had. Kayla was not present, and we did talk about the correlation of maybe the unveiling of that.
Sure. It gives us more time. I mean, either way, we just want to complete it in the calendar year of 2019.
The only thing I guess I can think of being a challenge is you're right on the beach, and this, for all construction projects, let's put it that way, the city permits, got to be designed to 135 mile per hour, which may be a challenge.
Right, and we've talked about that dynamic, and I guess the suggestion, I just actually had lunch with an engineer, a structural engineer yesterday about this, and I guess the easiest way to implement that would be to have it removable, which would create extra burden for an organization or someone to remove it during, luckily with hurricanes, we do know in advance when they are coming, so it'd be something we can take out of the ground. I think the suggestion Nick kind of presented is when we were talking about developmental design was, have you ever seen it's a 2.5-inch pipe? You put something in and out of it, has a cotter pin that basically secures it, something like that, some sort of contraption that will lock something into place, but if we need to remove it because of a hurricane or some storm, it can be picked up and relocated to a storage facility if required.
Or if you have any engineers, civil engineers, structural engineers that you can tap, you may be able to make it so it would survive.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, it isn't like 155, which is, you know, basically tear anything out of the ground or blow a block wall down. But 135 is, it's significant, but it's not overwhelming.
I think we should put it in a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
Do some testing.
I have to say that I'm extremely surprised that there's still beanbags in the cornhole.
Yeah.
It is really
So
cool
are we.
if you've never seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, square, pretty awesome.
Yeah, it really says something about the acceptance of your projects in the area. That people are really respecting that, and I think that's awesome. I'm so happy you decided to come here first to City Satellite Beach.
Yeah.
Everybody here is excited about that.
Careful.
How long do you want this thing to last on the beach? We did have the coquina installation there, and we've kind of been asked to have that removed. What's the lifespan on this thing?
So which was another conversation we had, and which is why we are allocating a certain amount of our budget to preventive maintenance and other restoration projects. How long will it last? I wish I could tell you. I would love to say 100 years, but we know that the beach and the salt water is very obstructive. 10 years, I think, would be a good goal. As far as what we're going to construct it out of, I think is really going to tell what that 10 year is actually going to be. And the gentleman that I had lunch with yesterday, the initial concept was some sort of galvanized steel to almost create the structure of the turtle and then wrap it in a mesh. But then we started having conversations about bamboo or other sustainable materials that can't, and then it just got down this crazy path. We found some guy in Japan that makes this bamboo stuff. It was a really great lunch. But that's where the conversations went as far as what other items can we make this out of to ensure that it does have longevity and it is not something that is at one point an art concept and something that's recycled material, and then all of a sudden it's a piece of crap on your beautiful beach.
So for your maintenance, how often are you going to empty it? Is it going to get as full as the one that's in this picture?
Highly unlikely. So our plan right now is to work with Brian and Keep of Our Beautiful. We've determined that probably a monthly sorting / disposal would be more than appropriate, just based on the attendees that go to the beach, the sheer volume of how large this turtle will be. I'd imagine that if it's 10 feet is kind of our initial construction, our goal on that. I mean, that volume would handle lots of recycling material, and I don't think we'll ever hit that capacity.
Is it going to be located right on the beach?
No.
Nick proposed,
So I did speak with Cassie at Rec and Public Works, and after having those conversations, the area just south of the existing recycling at Pelican, so you have the bathrooms and then you have the solar belly, and there's a green space right there. That seems to be both, blocked by the sea grapes for some of that salt freeze, It's not directly on the road, so for, when people want to take pictures or something, it would have a nice backdrop. It would be in the public's eye, so that when there were events, that people wouldn't be going out of their way to recycle, because that's going to limit your recycling capabilities. So it would be right there where they're already recycling and where they can throw away trash, so they won't be throwing trash in it. They'll be recycling, predominantly bottles, I think was kind of the goal of this installation. So that's where it would be. And there's a few other details which I can talk about later that we kind of talked about.
Yeah, so much more than just a recycling receptacle. It's an educational piece, it's an art sculpture, it's an opportunity for people to take photos and tag them and show world exposure. It's kind of a multifaceted project that these are all things that we think about before we say this is the project or we're going this direction. We ensure that it kind of adheres to certain guidelines.
Is it going to smell at all?
I mean, it possibly could. There's a potential of that, but it will be open, so we will allow enough breeze through it. It'll almost be like recycling at your house. How does the recycling at your house smell?
Like fish.
I usually rinse out my cans, but,
right.
Not everybody's going to be doing that.
Well, I think
we have some cat food in there.
That would be as far as the guidelines. So the whole concept would be Millie is the name of the turtle, and the first placard we would see on there is what is in Millie's diet. And it's essentially we're adhering to the guidelines of what you can recycle and what you cannot, because there's a large gap. People think that they can take a thing of cat food and not rinse it out and recycle it, and that's contaminating the whole recycling process. So we would have kind of an educational piece that shows people what they can recycle. So if it's cat food that needs to be rinsed out, I think we would be able to hopefully at least have one barricade of conversation before that happens.
Also, it will rain, and it will filter through.
Oh, yeah, well, I guess where would it drain? I mean, we don't want a pool of...
Probably grass, right?
Yes, it's probably grass there. And there'll be pervious pavers underneath.
I also have one other question, is that I've seen something like this similar in Charleston, South Carolina, and they tried to make art, and it's clearly not. And if it's not beautiful, then it's going to be an issue for people. I mean, you want something that's you say you want to create art, and Millie is a turtle, and how is she going to?
And are you an engineer by trade?
No.
No. So I had the conversation with the engineer I had yesterday. It was 20 minutes, and we were on 2 different pages, and I was talking about art, and he said, well, turtle, the shell is the turtle, and then it was an anatomical conversation about what a turtle actually is. So the shell of the turtle that we are proposing to make is not the shell of an anatomical turtle. So the shell on a turtle is the orifice in which the turtle actually gets inside of it. Probably back here on that. But for the sake of this art installation, the shell will be an individual piece, and we are working with a local surf shop using their recycled or their extra foam pieces from the shaping of the boards, and that will be the shell of the board, and that will be painted. I think we're trying to get some of the students in Satellite to actually paint that as the focal art installation. The body of the turtle, per se, which where all the recyclables go, will be that mesh insert, a skeleton kind of I was using the analogy of a mango pit. Has anyone ever seen one of those? Yeah. Elongated pit. It's about this big, but think 10 feet. So that would be the actual turtle where the recyclables go, and the shell goes right on top of it, which is the foam of the surfboard that is painted.
And then how do you take everything out?
So in the mouth is where we're proposing. So the turtle, we're introducing a 30 to 45 degree angle to allow mouth entry for recyclables. Yeah. So we've talked about height because most likely we want children to start picking up habits. It'll be adults, 6 feet and some change. So at a 30 to 40 degree angle optimal, where you put the recyclables in and allow gravity to take it down to the rear end of it, and in the rear we will have a hatch where the recyclables can be taken out.
Natural.
All right. I was up thinking about this last night, and say this is the turtle on land walking across. I was wondering, are you going to turn this turtle like this way? Or are you going to have it like this?
I think it'd be closer to that angle. So you're now at about a 42 degree angle with the head, and then I think you have a 17-inch on the y-axis.
Okay.
If I'm correct.
Okay. Just curious, because I don't think it'd be as appealing straight.
Absolutely not. And that's something we need to talk about placement.
For the trash to go back, it would need to be up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, where the face is going to be, because for optimal photo opportunity, when you talk about placement as far as when you're dropping a can or something recyclable on there, is it actually going to tumble down, or will it stay at the throat and then create a choking hazard per se?
So you're going to be able to take pictures on the body side with all the cans and so forth? Or
that's kind of the goal. So we want people to be able to take a selfie or get a photo opportunity showcasing pelican in the rear, the face of the turtle, showing the recyclables, the placards we have, showing our sponsors, the educational pieces, things like that. And that's really going to be something, I mean, we can render it as much as we want, but it's really going to be at the implementation stage when that really happens, is when we're going to get out there. If you've ever worked with an artist, the initial composure that they say they're going to do and what they finalize is vastly different, and it's because when they get there, they feel the energy of it and things change. And that, I think, will happen with the turtle as far as placement, angles, things like that.
Even size?
Size, I mean, it's going to be 10 foot, I think, at the maximum. We are going to scale that down because we're going to build the turtle beforehand. As far as placement is when things are going to really come into play.
I just want to say this is great. You kind of had me at the mission statement in the beginning as a Gen Xer. So I didn't know the word obvi until my kids taught me that. With kids, I really appreciate the mission to be age diverse in the community, which is one of the reasons why we love living here. So I really appreciate that, and also the connectedness. So in philosophy, I think this is a fantastic idea, and also appreciate that the logistics of it, you know, you have quite a bit of it worked out already, which is great. I mean, I applaud you on your due diligence on that. Obviously, there'll be things that need to be thought of, and also maybe additional input. As an idea, I think it's wonderful. So I'm just wondering what sort of next steps would be in terms of having to vet that further, or just, you know, getting input in terms of what that would look like in reality. Yeah.
City managers behind it.
Okay.
And let me, if you guys look read your packet carefully, I'm on the board of 321 and KBB. So this is I think this is a great. I'm excited because I think it's a great project, but I'm also excited because if the city you know, gets on board, it's three organizations I care a lot about, you know, working to do something cool. But I was on the project last year, and I feel like once we found we wanted EGAT Square, we thought that was the right spot for the cornhole boards, and once we had a place, a lot of things kind of came in from there, you know. So I think that, you know, knowing that it would be able to be built at Pelican, when we started talking about it, I was like, getting Nick on board in terms of the city logistical side is, you know, that's, once we have a place to put it, there's where do we put it, building it, and then if Brian can maybe talk a little bit about, you know, the KBB as a partner, which there's been a long-term partnership between them and 321 as well.
Well, I'm Brian Bogg from Titusville, Florida, and Keep Our Bar Beautiful. Mark approached me a few months ago about this project. I was like, hey, yeah, that's a great idea. And in the meantime, I've been tagged on several Facebook posts with this picture, and a lot of people saying, hey, let's do this, let's make this happen, blah, blah, blah. And the last time I got tagged, I was like, okay, well, I tagged Mark and Shane, and 321 Millennials has partnered with Keep Our Bar Beautiful for years at this point, and it's been a great partnership. And we just got together, and it was an idea that they had, and we're like, yeah, absolutely. So the idea as far as maintaining it, obviously we don't want to get that full just for the effort of having to empty it out. But we're 100% on board to have our crews come out here on a monthly basis and pretty much open up the rear and get everything out. And I believe logistics were still kind of ironing out, but the City of Satellite Beach has offered a place where our crews can go sort it, what's actually recyclable, what's not, and dispose of it properly from there with the City of Satellite Beach. So we're very excited.
Well, we already have the monthly cleanup that the teenager kind of runs, as I recall, at Pelican.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be kind of done
yeah, I
in
mean,
synchrony with that, perhaps.
It can be, but the logistics of actually hauling that kind of materials and sorting it, you got to have someone that's willing to be dependable to be there at all time. With my crews, they're staff, they're not volunteers, so it's a guarantee that we'd be out here to come clean it out and everything else like that. So any volunteers that want to assist with that, by all means, we welcome anyone to come work with our organization, and we can train people, could help out our cost end of it, but we're willing to eat that cost just to be part of a program and a project that we think is just really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, to move things on, I'll move that we recommend that council approve the project, but then we need to open it up to public comment and all that. I'll make a motion anyway get things moving.
Second.
Okay?
I think it's a good idea.
Have a motion and a second.
Oh, okay, I thought you said you wanted to have comments, sorry. Jennifer Schroeder,
Yes.
Mark Boyd,
Yes.
John Fergus,
Yes.
David Vigliotti,
Yes.
Chris Reed,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I want to say one just thing I forgot to say about the signage. In addition to educating about, recycling, I think it's an opportunity to have education about the kind of what you can recycle and also the adverse effects of not recycling, the proverbial sea turtle with the straw and its nose,
We said feed Millie, not the millions of sea turtles.
Exactly, yeah.
There
This
you
is
go.
the sea turtle that you can feed, for kids, so anyways.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You make sure that when it goes to the board that I'm there to film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And logistically, should they will they need to come back to present to the full board,
Not us,
to the city council?
I think that would be prudent.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, just for the video, I would appreciate it, just as a documentary, I would like to. I'm sorry, guys, if you wouldn't mind presenting us to the board as well, potentially, that'd be great.
Yeah,
The council.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we're a
Yeah.
practice group.
Right.
We're appointed, not elected.
That's
These
right.
are
We'll
a
advise
big
you.
business.
What date would that be?
Yeah.
I can't give you a date right
It's
now.
not decided yet, but,
Earliest would be,
The 21st is the absolute earliest.
Okay. So not like tomorrow.
current.
yeah,
Let
we're-
us know.
No, yeah.
We'll be here.
Thank you.
Cool.
I appreciate
Awesome.
it just because, again, I'm
No,
doing
17th.
a documentary on recycling and everything that's going on.
Will you make
in
sure,
the industry right
Julie,
now,
you
as
make sure I
well
know
as
too?
A lot of educational, what should and shouldn't be recycled and whatnot. The city is a big part of this documentary, and I would like to include this dynamic that's going on in the city as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, one kind of addendum here. It appears that a real problem with recycling is there too much of the inappropriate stuff going in, which is, I think Nick stressed that. I know I was at a lunch thing with the MRC, and they really hammered that, was, things like this, no. And
That's part of the signage that we want to have. We want it to be very clear about what should go in Millie and what shouldn't go in Millie.
And we've reached out to Waste Management. I know that's a big talking point for them at the moment too, is educating people on what to recycle and what not to.
Yeah.
That's kind of the benefit of having our crews to go out there and do it, is our crews are actually trained on what is properly recyclable, what's
Yeah.
actually considered contaminated, to kind of help streamline that process.
And it would be interesting, kind of, if folks are doing that, if you kept a tally sheet there with it. In other words, we did 500 pounds of recycled, and hopefully 100 pounds of trash versus 1,000 pounds of trash.
That is very easily doable.
It's a great idea.
With all the other projects that our crews do, they have bag sheets that they actually complete every time they do a cleanup, so that way we have accountability of how much we're actually removing from the beaches or from the roads and everything else like that. So it's nothing for us to sit there and bag everything and say, okay, we actually had, and we base all of our bag weights that they keep the American Beautiful rate at 25 pounds per bag, plus I don't want to throw our guys' backs out, so. We keep a bag count of that, we can tell you how much is, how much we recycled, how much was contaminated, and we can track that and report that back to 321 and then take it from there. It's awesome.
How much did Millie eat this year?
Yeah.
All right, any further public comment? No? All right, well, at this time, we welcome you to stay. You can stay as long as you want. I know you guys probably have things to do. You can be excused if you'd like, or you can stay as long as you want.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next order of business, discuss, take action, Sierra Club for the 100 campaign. We talked about that a little earlier. I guess we need to make some type of motion.
Yep. So based on the recommended action again, to approve the resolution relating to achieving 100% renewable energy by 2050. And since this does fall in line with the Sustainability Action Plan's goals for the city itself by 2037, and as all the items outlined in the resolution itself that showcase the different reasons why. The only thing that we would ask is to approve the resolution to go to council.
Also move.
Second.
John Curtis?
Yes, but then I have a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do we have a working copy of the resolution?
Yes, and that was presented last time. It's resolution 1011.
011. Okay, how about yes?
David Bigliotti?
Yes.
Mark Boyd?
Yes.
Jennifer Schroeder?
Yes.
Chris Reed?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all so much.
My concern is that the more I'm reading, the more I'm finding, kind of like the recycling. Everybody thought recycling was easy. You just, didn't put garbage in. And going renewable is an incredible, for electricity, is an incredible engineering feat. We think about, we're using electric now because the solar's not working on the roof. It generated the electricity this morning. That can be done with batteries. But the big deal is when you look at the summer versus the winter, there's a huge difference. And so the issue is not just storing it for a few hours, it's how do you adjust for the seasons and things. And this is really scaring, I think, the utilities. Because they're on the hook. You turn on a light switch, they don't care, you don't care what season it is, what hour it is, you want the lights to go on. And they've got to deal with it. And so I've got a problem with their business model, that's one thing, but they do have a terrible technical problem that needs to be dealt with. And I guess where I'm going with this is that really needs to be looked at. Okay, so maybe more people getting on board will help to push that. But this is not an easy, put in more solar arrays and put in more windmills and we're good. It's a whole lot more complex than that.
I would agree, and I think that half of the equation is often the human component and changing culture around how we engage with our environment. And there's so many things we can do now to change what we do on a daily basis, but it requires human change. But I think you're absolutely right that that could push that equation. So when I think about this board, I think about two sides of that equation, infrastructure and human behavior in just about everything we talk about.
But I guess maybe to piggyback on that, if the council adopts the resolution, to make it work is going to require a change in behavior of the people that live in the city. And it doesn't mean that you cook over a fire and things like that. You don't walk everywhere, including to work at, at the airport. But it does mean changing habits.
So part of the reason that Sierra Club is pushing this is they use it as a tool to show that so many people are on board so that they then can push political and industrial revolution and change. So really what we're doing is we're just putting our name on the list, saying we're ready for this to be addressed properly. I think that it is important that we join that list.
If I may, John, just to your point, there is a part in here that says to develop a plan to achieve that. So, of course, everyone will probably be part of that. And also that there are 39 U.S. cities, including San Diego and San Jose, California, that have adopted this already. And that, some of them have already hit that target. So there is a template out there that we can kind of use as a toolkit to help develop our plan. So good all around, and can keep the conversation going. Absolutely, we'll continue this for the next 20, 30 years. So, but thank you very much.
All right. Any further public comment?
Also, just one thing about it. To me, it's aspirational. I agree with I guess with everybody. But I mean, if we're not aspiring for that, I mean, what are we doing? You know, I mean, that's my view on it. All right.
All right, any further public comment at this time? Please come to the,
I'm Susan Little. I'm sorry, I don't live in Satellite Beach, Indian Harbor Beach, but I agree with John. It's going to be very tricky to change FPL's business strategy. But Northwestern University has studied that around the country, and they have some material that municipalities can use to try to go back to your utilities and get them to change, and to your, like, I can't remember what it's called, but Florida Public Utilities Board. So, and New York has done it. New York has changed their policies all around so that their business plan isn't just based on how much energy you sell. It's based more on the maintenance of the wires and things like that. So there's a lot of information out there. And you probably are familiar with the Northwestern University because they're the sustainability school that Linda uses. Yeah, so they have a whole program on that.
oh, really?
We'll make sure that gets that information out to our board.
Do you have a title that you can remember on?
No, it's all saved on my computer, but I'll send it to Nick and he can get it out to you.
Very cool.
Yeah, because this one is tricky because California changed the way they did electricity like 10 or 15 years ago. What they did, they broke it and said that it used to be like FPL. FPL generates and distributes. And California split it. And the rates just absolutely went crazy because you had the generators and you had the transmitters. And the incentives became counterproductive. And the rates just went crazy. There's been, I think, some successes also. I did read, I think earlier this week, that there's actually a referendum being passed around in Florida right now. It has, as I recall, about a third of the needed signatures to put on the ballot in 2020 a referendum to basically split generation and transmission. And the reason I read about it is because FPL, Duke Energy, and there's two others. They're the big IOU, investor-owned utilities, are fighting this tooth and nail, and so is a bunch of the politicians, including our Attorney General, they've gone to court trying to kill it. So this is a biggie right now that's playing right here at home.
All right, is there any further public comment? No? All right, let's move on to our next item. Discuss, take action on the presentations on seagrass. We had those presentations last month?
2 months.
2 months ago?
Yeah.
Well, we had two successive meetings worth of presentations on the topic.
Well, the last meeting, the meeting before was the last one, right?
Yeah, the last one was on the manatees, and the 2 meetings ago was the true seagrass
But
presentation.
the manatee presentation was kind of seagrass. I would characterize that as a theory related to seagrass
Yeah.
and manatees.
And voting advocacy, I think, was mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, have you had any more discussions on seagrass with anybody, or is it still where we?
So as part of the NEP grant that I wrote and got half partial funding for, part of that, after getting the partial funding, is to continue to look for additional funding, working with, different agencies, trying to get the funding, talking about the seagrass itself as, a permitting issue and things of that nature. Through that, I've been talking about seagrass, but not as far as those specific presenters. I haven't talked to them individually since that, but just talking about the permitting of it and planting of it and the techniques involved and other resources that we might be able to reach out to. In fact, the mayor had a friend who was an oyster farmer who was able to come and talk to me a little bit about his experiences with with oyster farming and some issues that might want to think about as far as the planting itself and the ways to go about doing that so that we, don't overburden ourselves with multiple boats and things of that nature when it comes to the actual planting.
I've spent a lot of time actually thinking about this the last 2 months with the presentations. And so this seems to be such a big issue because I think on the one hand, you could say, well, how do we increase the amount of seagrass? But what I heard from the 2 presenters that went 2 months ago was that, I think, Mark, you asked, what is your one thing that you think is most important? Both of them said reduction of fertilizer if they were forced to say one thing. So I feel like, I guess what I'd like to talk about is sort of this holistic approach in terms of how this board can help to advise the council in terms of the tiered priorities for, and if you look at other Indian River, Lagoon councils, things like that, reducing contaminants, what does that mean for increasing the environment with which seagrass could thrive? And then seagrass as an indicator. So that was where there's a lot to wade through in terms of information. Seagrass is an indicator of health. It's not necessarily the solution by itself to a better lagoon, and there's a combination of these efforts. So you've got reduction of fertilizer, which is a whole thing, education, policies. You've got, the seagrass planting, oyster beds, living seashores, and you've got other conditions that were brought up in terms of, I think Matt maybe brought up, the power plant and manatees and things like that. This is such a big issue, so I guess what I would like to see us identify is what are our tiered priorities in terms of ticking off what we can advise on and maybe tackle with all of those things involved.
I think that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Tiered priorities. You got me on that. Because we could definitely speak to our opinion on fertilizer and.
Well, Nick, along that line, I'm asking a question because I have no idea about the answer. The city charges utility taxes because the utilities are using our rights of way. Okay, the state lets us do that. Up to 10%, I think, is the max. We have, I'd say, the vast majority of the fertilizer is applied by fertilizer companies, not by Joe Public going to Lowe's and buying a bag. Is there a legal structure where the city could tax the fertilizer that's applied in the city? In other words, if you're eco-friendly company and you come in and you're spreading fertilizer, you say, okay, what's the mix? And you pay so many dollars per pound because it cost us a certain amount to remove it. Now, we can't charge them per pound what it costs us to remove it, because that's between $1,000 and $10,000 a pound, okay? That doesn't work. But you could charge enough that the price they charge the customer goes up, and when people start paying, and they can put it on the bill, I'd prefer they did. Nitrogen tax. Okay, just a thought. But, we don't tell people they can't fertilize, but we say you're going to help pay for what that does when it enters the system.
So you're saying to tax the purchase of the fertilizer at the source, or that the person applying it?
Well, we can't do it at the source because our folks will go to Indian Harbor Beach and buy it there, and that doesn't do us any good. But when Green Frog, or whatever the name of the company is, comes and sprays your lawn, okay, we already said that we would vet, or your training of people that work with lawns. This would kind of be the next step and say, okay, if you're spreading nitrogen in our city, you're going to pay for that privilege.
So like a business tax?
Well, yeah, but I wasn't thinking of business tax because the state already has that one wrapped up. I'm thinking a tax on the product itself.
I wonder if that's something that could be brought to the sustainability working group too.
Sure.
Because if we can have a county-wide influence there, it's going to have a much larger impact on the lagoon than just people doing that within our city.
Because like John said, they could just go to Indian Harbor.
Yeah.
How can we police the amount that people are spreading out?
Yeah, that's.
No, you don't police what they're spreading on the grass. You police what each company has to register, or get a license, or whatever, to operate in the city.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of outside, it is outside the jurisdiction of this board specifically, but to me, countywide would be more effective, and I mean, I'll say, I mean, this is a pretty, anti-tax, area. I'm not a big fan of taxes myself, but having to do with the lagoon, and the fact that the sales tax passed speaks to the degree which people care about this issue.
In every sector, you come on top of the lagoon.
Yeah, so there may be, at the county level, potential viability for that, as education has risen regarding the, and doesn't mean, but also just you get into the kind of a political economy debate, I mean, then people in Titusville certainly will drive over the border to Volusia and Seminole to buy, I mean, but it could potentially do something, but doing it just in the city, specifically on commercial people who are coming in, I question the efficacy of that versus the difficult, because most people in Brevard are probably self-fertilizing still, I would imagine.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I don't think most people are having their lawns taken care of.
Really?
Yeah, most people are having to cut their own lawns.
And this is something where you're not taxing everyone, you're taxing the people that are participating and contributing to the problem, just like a cigarette tax and things like that. Like
It's
the
a sin
people that
tax,
are
basically.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you want to continue to participate in that, then you get to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And I'm a far bigger fan of that type of taxation than an across-the-board tax that affects everyone. Whereas, if we're working with the city to make sure that we're not having fertilizers that have pollutants in it, then more people are going to seek out those types of things because these things wouldn't apply. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'll agree, if you can do it countywide, that's great. If you could do it statewide, that'd be fabulous, but that's probably dreaming. But anyway, I thought I'd bring up the idea.
I like the idea.
If you went county, it would be easier to police, I should say, at the source of where it's being purchased. I mean, don't you think? I mean, that would be the functionally easiest way to keep track of it, as opposed to what they're putting down on lawn by lawn, which would make it more viable countywide, because you're right. There's not really anywhere that's selling a lot of fertilizer, probably in the city of Satellite Beach.
Well, I think if you had something like, say, Company A has this many houses in the city of Satellite Beach, this is how much we'll charge that person for doing business in the city.
If they're using certain fertilizers, if they're doing totally all green, then we don't want to, you want to encourage the.
I also wonder if there's a flip side to this, which is the behavior change component of, like, right now, it's sort of like we're just used to having lawns, but, by 2050, there will be no non-native plants, and, something like that. There's changing expectations, which means you wouldn't need fertilizer, or some incentive for, like, we give awards, right, which is good. It's recognition by your neighbors of your non-native, or excuse me, your native plants in your yard and reducing non-native, but something more than that, even some financial incentive perhaps.
Well, actually, if you go around the city and look very carefully, there's a growing number of lawns that are not St. Augustine, and quite a few of them are just whatever comes up, they get it mowed every week or whatever, it looks green, but it's not St. Augustine, it's not Bahia, it's not Bermuda, it is stuff, but it's green. And as long as it's holding the sand down, that's all that the city cares about. And so, it doesn't have to be all Spartina and, this and that, it can be whatever.
Not needing
Who cares?
fertilizer.
Yeah, just whatever comes up. And, that's where a lot of it seems to be going, I think, as money gets tighter and tighter. We've been seeing, my wife and I, we're seeing more and more of this if you really pay attention. It isn't that they're straggly lawns and they look terrible. They're green, but they're not grass.
No, I think it's a good idea. It wasn't even criticism, my thoughts are more just how can it, because anytime you're talking about a tax, there's a possibility for political fallback, so how can you be most targeted with it, I guess is my question. But I think it's a good, because I mean, if you look at, I mean, cigarettes are what, like $8 a pack now in some place? I mean, if you think that, I feel like that, if you looked at it, that probably, in addition to public education, I feel like on the margins, that has had a deterrent effect on people smoking, I would imagine.
I think lawn care is a pretty profitable industry, my understanding. And those people are going to quickly learn that if they're passing, this fee down to their consumers, that could negatively affect their business. And so adversely, they could say, but we also offer these alternatives that don't come with that fee. So it would encourage then those lawn companies that aren't already offering those alternatives to be like, here's the alternative for you. I think there's a lot of benefit to it. And maybe we can't figure out all the logistics tonight, but I'm totally in favor of us moving in a direction and encouraging, as Jen said, to have council move into making a priority of how do we reduce nutrient load in the lagoon coming from where we know it comes from.
Let's expand that from nutrient to chemical,
Yeah.
because we've got the PFAS business that keeps percolating. I have somebody from California that's visiting, and he's seen it on Facebook. We were looking at houses in South Patrick Shores today, and he brought it up about groundwater. And so you got that. There's a whole list of stuff that goes on lawns. Glyphosate is another one.
We're down that already. Privacy?
Right. If I may, to Jazzy's point, and also to Jennifer's point with the laws and the education, the city did help create the Lagoon Frontage Lawn Program with Keep of Our Beautiful, who was just here. And we do have more Lagoon Frontage lawns in the city of Satellite Beach than anywhere else in the Lagoon Frontage Lawn area. So that part of it is working, and to John's point, Sally Scalera from UFIFAS always talks about just mowing. Even if it's weeds and whatever, it's green, it's fine. So there is an education component that does exist, and we can just continue to double down on that and to promote that Lagoon Frontage Lawn practices that do affect the actual companies themselves to get certified as well, and not just the homeowner, but also the companies. So there are some tools available that, if everybody wants to work towards pushing that some more and letting people know, we can maybe run a small workshop or something specifically on that. The native plant one is tomorrow. We'll talk about lots of these things also.
Excuse me. What are alternatives for fertilizer? Do we know of any? Can you put like fish,
seaweed and stuff like that?
Seaweed and stuff. I mean, what?
The point is, it's still the nitrogen and the phosphorus that's in the proteins that's in the fish that you put on the ground.
It's the native plants and the landscaping choices that you make that don't require those types of elements.
And azomite is a good product that's trace minerals that actually works quite well.
Yeah, remineralizing the soil is something that UFIFAS talks about at every presentation. And if you remineralize the soil, it actually doesn't need all those fertilizers, because it's the lack of minerals in our sandy soils that actually contribute to a lot of plant health problems.
Do we discuss those types of things at events and so forth?
I've had 2 workshops that have discussed that specifically, where UFIFAS has come in and talked about that. And at our events, the Earth Day event, they were there to talk about that as well. Again, it's just getting the word out and making sure that people are aware. Our Beachcaster has, the dates and times of the workshops, and they're posted online.
This Earth Friendly Community Campaign with Mindy, does that have anything to do with that education component? I mean, explicitly, what does...
So when a business comes into the area, or if a resident moves into the area, they'll be educated about the things we're trying to accomplish and the ways to accomplish those green achievement targets, or just regular sustainable practices, if they're lawn maintenance or water usage or energy use. They'll tackle all those different topics through that portal of, welcome to the city, here's some things we want to let you know about.
Could they get a free native plant as a gift? sponsored by the
I'm meeting with her
city.
tomorrow, it's a great idea.
I mean, people like this. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I'd like to recognize something. There's a park, I think you've had some involvement with it, it's on Temple and Norwood. That small park.
Elwood.
Elwood.
It's not.
Elwood and Temple.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
stormwater park.
There's a bad house
Yeah,
there.
it's a bad house there.
Yeah.
I have to say that that's starting to look really nice. I don't know if you've been directly involved with
Public
that.
Works did a lot of work to make that nice. That was because there was a lower area in the city that was flooding, and they converted it to a park.
Is it, are all those are not all native plants? though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's plum, there's gumbo limbo, there's Blake flower and dune sunflower. It's predominantly natives as far as I've seen. If there is an invasive there, let me know and I'll take it out.
Well, it's looking really good.
That was
It's
actually
looking
the
good.
first Pat Fox.
That was the first
John
time.
did that video.
And we reinforced it with steel cables now, so it's hurricane proof.
Don't say that. You're just inviting a Cat 5.
It's looking real good, by the way.
Can I just follow up on what Jazzy said before, just circling way back about the commercial lawn care businesses? I do think that if you could create incentives for there to be more of a market for green commercial lawn services, there's probably people who, like, theoretically would like to have greener lawns because they care or it's becoming a cool thing to do and all that, but don't have the knowledge or the time to do it, but may have the money to pay someone else to do it. So if we can encourage a market for that, that may be a good way to have a expanding effect beyond people who have the time, knowledge, and desire to make their own lawn more green.
I actually remember when we first created this, because the Lagoon Lawn Program actually did start with this board, and then we kind of passed it off to KBB because we could not manage that. But we were trying to actually go in a different direction originally. Instead of charging someone, we were trying to incentivize. I can't remember how, but maybe it was like through giving them a slightly smaller business tax or something. I can't remember what it was, but I remember we were trying to find ways to almost incentivize them to be green instead of charging them for not being.
Right, I think it's something to do with realtors and their position on a website, that they would get more hits through the KBB website. That's kind of how that one works.
Yeah.
It's definitely advertising, yeah.
Advertising, okay, yeah. I remember we were trying to incentivize that. We were trying to find ways to incentivize them to do the right thing instead of charging them for doing it wrong.
All right, so we need to make a motion of some type to formulate an opinion or something.
Do you feel that you need any direction, or we need a motion, or do you think you've got direction to do whatever?
So from what I heard from the board, it's to create this hierarchy of goals, of different speakers and topics we want to kind of tackle, and I think that I've gotten some great direction from the board about that. I don't think we need a motion.
So we'll continue to.
We'll continue that, and again, if there's any topics and speakers that anyone specifically wants, send it to staff, and then we'll make sure.
I've kind of surveyed my street and walked around it, just like John's saying, and I've noticed the people that are getting mostly the nitrogen, and most of it is because of the sprayed lawns, and it's mostly generally elderly people that are too lazy to do it themselves or whatever, and they don't know what they're getting on the grass. They don't realize what they're doing to the environment. And so it's hard to, training, and that's what we're doing about, but mostly people are changing. You see the yards today. I grew up here, so I know that they were all green, perfect lawns, and they're not like that anymore. It's changing. We're making a movement. It is changing, and I think it's just more education. We can't, I don't know if we can get them to come in here and talk about, each one of those chemical spray guys to come in and talk to us about what they spray on their lawns, and then we can just listen. And then maybe what's their solution? What are you doing that's not bad for the environment? Are you using better products, or what are you doing? We just listen. We have to learn somehow. And then we get to kind of know what they're doing. And maybe we can recommend somebody that's doing the right thing. I don't know, because they're the ones that are doing it.
We could hear too from them, what they hear from their customers, what the customers are asking for.
Yeah.
So that maybe that would also allow us to come up with better solutions to still give people what they want.
It's a business.
But in a more, right.
Yeah, it seems like there's a ton of opportunity to keep this top of mind with residents. I mean, even things like, some annual event in which, we're doing a campaign, almost like you go out with a clipboard and say, hey, we're just checking on, your lawn in terms of our Satellite Beach's city values, and what do you think? Have you ever heard of this? I don't know. I feel like we could brainstorm so much, even more that's what's going on, but I also feel like as a new board member, I feel like there's so much that has happened. We're building on stuff in the county, and I guess as part of the tiered priorities, staying, as you've done very well, Nick, like staying up to speed about what everyone else is doing and how we're coordinating, which is that's a tough gig because there's a lot going on. That's the upside of all this. But maybe we just all are,
I'd like to
Yeah.
say something about that.
Yeah.
Making a tiered priority, I think is really awesome. An action plan to stay kind of abreast on where we are on our research, I think is a very important thing that we could do and share to the public. We don't have all the answers, but we could let the public know this is how we're thinking about a certain thing and how we're researching it now, just to give people an idea of our stance at this moment. We don't have to be so conclusive on everything. Just an idea.
I'll start creating a catalog of, previous speakers and topics, and, we can have that so we can just keep building on it.
I've got one more thing.
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
I had a great conversation with Anthony Gubler. You know who he is?
Brevard County Natural Resources.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with him about seagrasses, and it was at a bar, so we had a pretty open conversation. And he's been involved in some cool projects where he's been transplanting grasses up and down the intercoastal, different types. He's been relocating them to see if they'll stick. So I wanted him to come in and speak, about that particular project and what came of it. Unfortunately, he doesn't want to really come in and talk about that. But he is in charge of turf grass, septic systems, biosolids, emerging contaminants, and so forth, things like that. Is there anything you think that he could come talk to us about? He would have to get permission to come talk to us because a lot of things that he does are politically motivated. I wanted to know what your opinion might be on something like that.
So from the county perspective, I would think that Brandon Smith would be the one that would do the presentation. He might present Anthony's research and data, but that Brandon is more in charge of the soil funding and educational outreach as well. He might be a good one to team up with Anthony. If Anthony wasn't comfortable doing it, that they have staff that may be comfortable doing that. I'd be happy to reach out to Brevard County to try to facilitate that and work with them, because the variety of seagrass plantings that you speak of is, it's really important to the health of the lagoon. It's diversity, right? And the project that we're proposing is just a single species. So to hear his success stories and experiences would be great. And on that note, one of the people that I did reach out to for funding for the rest of the grant was Brevard County through the Sorrel. Okay. So we'll cross our fingers on that one.
All right. So maybe over this month we'll just discuss how we can get someone from that organization to come present.
I have two quick things that hopefully will be quick. The first is, I guess, troubled would be the word I would use to describe my reaction to the manatee presentation, and it's not because I question anything that the guy, I do question, I question everything. That's my, and I'm a contrarian, so just because that's not like the majority view doesn't mean I want to know if the manatees are decimating the seagrass and that's like an issue. So I want to find out more about that. And I will say, this is, I guess, reading second hand, but in the month since that happened, I heard Lisa Soto speak, and I basically posed the question here, which she was surprised when I asked it. I could tell about, thoughts on the manatees vis-a-vis seagrass, and dismissive of the theory, I guess, would be my description of her reaction to it, which is not, I mean, like I said, I don't mean to, say that, but I don't know. I want to know more about that, but to me, that's somewhat out there in terms of,
It's an outlier,
yeah. So
but that doesn't mean it's wrong.
That's what I'm saying. And when I say I'm troubled, I don't mean that I'm troubled. I want to. If it's what's going on, then it needs to be explored further. But I definitely didn't feel comfortable taking action on it based upon just what we heard.
Well, maybe that's a question more for FWC.
Yeah.
There's the biologist, the gal that helped with the our little sausage string that we developed here and stuff. What's her name? I've got it on my computer, but I can't remember her name. Somebody like that, and basically say, and I guess you could be upfront about it, is say, we had a presentation that says this, and we kind of aren't sure that's true. Do you have any either confirming or contradictory data? Not arm waving, we're looking for, he provided a bunch of numbers. Are the numbers any good? Do they make sense?
Yeah, I mean, he's on it. I mean, that's, but I want to know, I mean, that's just,
Well,
I want to know more.
I would agree, and I think the thing that I took away from it was that the hypothesis that there is an overpopulation of manatees, that's one thing to look further into. That they might be decimating seagrass, that's a second thing to look further into. I think there were a number of other assumptions and proposed solutions that I thought were a leap in logic in terms of it's okay if boats hit manatees, things like that. I think it was good, though, to discuss it and, really test out some of those assumptions. But yeah, so the thing I took away from that was there was a thesis on this overpopulation of manatees. Let's check that out. That they're decimating seagrass, okay. What to do about it is a whole other thing, and I think there's a lot of issues. Right. There was it's sort of inferring maybe eating them's okay. They did it in the 40s.
What I got out of the whole presentation was the fact, and I don't think any other presenters presented this, but the manatee population is down by half after this past tally. So it really interests me to see what might happen to the population next year. Is it going to jump back up to where it was, or is it going to stay at this low mark where it is now? So that's what I really got out of his presentation, was like, well, maybe now isn't the moment to take a stance, because we're not sure what the population is going to do next year for the manatees.
Right.
But I can't imagine that he's the only person on the face of the earth that's tried to do what I'll call a mass balance between how much seagrass is there that you can harvest and how many manatees would that feed.
Right.
I mean, somebody that raises cattle or horses on a ranch, they have to do that or they go broke.
Right.
So I can't imagine nobody has done that. And so the question is, who knows and if indeed it hasn't been done, maybe that's something that needs to be looked into. And the other thing is, it's not just mammoth seagrass. We all, I think, know that some of the microalgae produces a neurotoxin called microcystine. Well, I just read a couple weeks ago that folks, I think south of the Sebastian Inlet, but in the lagoon, were finding in the water and in the flesh of creatures that came out of the lagoon another neurotoxin produced by microalgae. And so you've got this dynamic going on too. So, there's just a mass of interconnecting things taking place.
On that comment, though, there actually are far more than we're even aware of, because we don't know how to test for what
That's right,
we're searching
yes.
for. So there's actually that whole dynamic that people are like, oh my God, there's a new one that we found. There's actually so many that we don't know, because we don't know how to look for them.
But my point was that, they say, well, there isn't enough microcystine to cause a problem. Well, yeah, you take that plus this one, plus, like you say, that one, and that one, and after a while, you've got a problem.
I think,
Okay, yeah.
I think I'm seeing value in how we're learning about this whole issue. Maybe that's something that's not offered by these other organizations because they have very strong opinions. So I think there's like really good value if we display how we're learning about these things and the different things we're learning.
I actually compare what we're doing very similar to the Save Our River Lagoon program, because every month they have people come and have presentations on various topics, and that's how they learn about whether it's septic tanks, seagrass, muck. And so going to those half-day meetings are actually incredibly educational for the lagoon. We're kind of now starting to shift into that same format where we're having people come in during meetings and we're learning in our meetings so that we're actually gaining a lot of knowledge to make more educated decisions. So there are other groups in the county that are doing similar stuff, but I feel like, yes, we do need to start letting the public know that that's kind of what we're doing now too, because a lot of people actually watch those meetings online because of all that information that they learn from them. So that may attract more people to actually watch our local feed, because we're actually giving them value of information in our meetings, not just kind of talking amongst ourselves.
And me and Nick talked about the Save Our Lagoon. I have a list of their videos, and I'd like to start retweeting them on our Facebook page. And they have tons, but they have low views. I mean, some have only like 4 views.
And part of that is because a lot of people don't want to watch a 20, 30-minute video or even like the hours-long video to watch the uncut version. Because on Facebook, they do cut out small presentations and post it sometimes. But if you go to the website, you have like a 5-hour meeting. Not many people are that dedicated that they're going to turn on that 5-hour meeting and really actually listen to that.
And kind of the second thing I want to say is the manatee, I guess, being kind of on the most controversial, unsure, and also if it is an issue, it's a big issue beyond the what this board could do something about. To the more, I guess in my view, like obvious and achievable thing, which is we said this a couple times now, but the grant you've got, and the fact that we have Sampson's, which is totally within the jurisdiction of this board because it is Satellite Beach property. It's right there. If we to start planting seagrass with the possible, it may be eaten by some manatees. We don't know. But I mean, to me, that is a project that I'm excited about, and is to me just hand in glove with what this board's all about to move forward with the planning.
But if we don't know if it's going to survive, what's the point of us wasting that money?
So to the point of the manatees and the survival of the grasses, the way that the project is designed is that the manatees will be kept out of that area. Right, so there's cages as a technique. There's also just either metal slats in between the oyster bed areas, the 100-foot long sections, or you can even just put PVC pipes in the ground at 2 or 1 foot intervals so they can't, get through to eat all that seagrass, but you can still allow flow through. So those have been taken into account.
The chemistry of the water, I mean, isn't that an issue too?
Well, historically there was seagrass there.
So that's where I think it could be a good test case. And I mean, in the long term, at some point we assume you remove that stuff. But I mean, but in the short term, the woman who spoke about the project up in Sykes Creek was talking about they had to keep the manatees out. Which I mean, in that sense, it was they were getting it when it was, I guess, juvenile seagrass. But I think it's a good test case for whether the viability of it, whether it can still grow in the water, or you see what I'm saying, whether it's something that went away because of an event and is, as the lagoon sits right now, is not able to come back, or whether it's not coming back because it's not there right now.
That's exactly what we want to test.
Yeah.
I just want to say to the board, thank you so much for all those notes and different speaker choices, and I will get you a list at next meeting of all the things you just mentioned. Thank you
Nick.
so much for all of that.
Thank you, Nick.
Good ideas. All right.
Guys, I apologize. I actually have to leave. I've got another appointment. But it was great seeing you all, and I'll definitely be back next meeting. I'm going to give you a call, don't worry.
All right. Any further public comment? No? All right. Next, we've discussed take action, future presentations at the meeting. I think we've already done that.
At the death.
Yeah, to death. All right.
Did you guys want to talk about young kids?
Board member comments
Oh,
happen too.
that'll be, I guess we can put that in here.
Oh, that's what I had made that
Oh,
item
that's what
for.
you put in there for?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to put it in board comments.
Oh.
But I'll do it now. Let me just hand these out real quick.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead and read it if you want. Okay, Nick will come back in shortly. All right, so we'll add this into this part. This is that idea that I was talking about, engaging the youth in the area, getting them to come in and give presentations or speeches on sustainability issues or environmental issues. So the purpose would be to provide students under the age of 19 the opportunity to practice speaking publicly and further educate the sustainability board members on topics of interest. This is also good for our leadership skills. They'll be able to come in and get the butterflies out and feel good about themselves. The activity date, we'd start on August 28th, and we do this at every sustainability board meeting. The minimum amount of time would be 4 minutes per student, and the max would be 10. Of
Was
course,
after a presentation?
Presentation or?
And then it runs whatever for questions afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd assume we wouldn't keep them hostage for too long, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, of course, we'll hold that here probably towards the beginning of our meetings. So that they
I'd
can go
suggest
home
it be done after public comment so they could leave.
After public comment?
You know, I wonder
Because
too.
it will be a school night.
Yeah, so we can get home for,
It's not a great track record of being early on the
So, first we'll have the kids present.
I have a question. There's an incomplete sentence here.
What students will...
The subject may be an international period.
Oh, sorry. The subject may be international. That's what I didn't mean to put N. So
Okay.
just international. It can be outside of the community. That's what I was meaning by that. I would personally love to start hearing about things in Asia, things that they're doing with the plastics there, in Africa, and things like I've read a story on whole entire countries that are taking down plastic bags in Africa. Like they made it a law. So it'd be interesting to hear if some hear that from a child, see what's going on over there if they want to present on stuff like that. After they present, we could give some constructive criticism. I think we'd probably need to discuss how much criticism we give these kids. We don't want to send them home crying. And I'd also like to offer an award, a communication award. And if I've got an idea of something here, just a blue ribbon with
Is it triple rosette the technical term for a ribbon of this nature?
And my son Logan.
Hi, Logan.
Logan is the one who actually informed me of that. I was like, oh yeah, we can get a ribbon. He's like, oh yeah, rosette. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? Yeah, no,
Nice job, Logan.
I was like, yeah, we can just get a single ribbon. No, Dad, get a rosette. And I'm like, all right. So I looked it up. Not only am I proposing a rosette, but a triple rosette.
Triple rosette.
So the rosette is this portion here. We maybe would put the Satellite Beach logo in the middle and a communication thing, information here. I looked up some prices. The triple rosette, it goes for about $388 a piece when you buy 10. But if you want to customize it, there's a 20% upcharge, so I think it's roughly around $5 per. do have some prices for other sizes if we want to do something like that.
I'm fascinated peering over your shoulder at the pricing list that the double rosette is more expensive.
It is more expensive. We'll have to call and ask. We'll have to call and ask about that.
Can I ask, like two things? I wonder if they could get something like this Satellite Beach water bottle as also something, like definitely an award, but like also something functional, like I got this for being. The second thing is also, I think it would be interesting too to hear about international topics, but I wonder if we could request for every speaker to talk about what they think the sustainability issue for Satellite Beach is most important to them. So think global, act local, just as a way to get input from residents who are under the age of 19, like what sustainability issue is most important to you, and what is your interest in acting to further the sustainability. It's kind of a recruitment tool, you know, for young people, as we say, what is your interest basically in getting involved? And,
I would love to add like that answer in every Beachcaster.
Yeah.
For the fun kid, that this was their answer.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. It was just too cool.
That's a great interruption. I love that. Yeah.
Couple of practical questions. As you said, under the age of 19. Number one, there could be somebody that repeated a couple of years that could be over 19. And how young does this go? First grade?
Well,
Does it matter? I'm not saying there's a bad answer.
No, this is definitely up for conversation. I put under 19, so we're focusing on children.
What if we say K through 12?
K through 12?
K through 12 is the way to
There
do
you
it.
go.
Yes, that makes sense.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be public school.
K through 12.
Could be homeschool.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
That's very good.
And who nominates or whatever? How do we?
I mean, if we have a waiting list, that'd be awesome, but
I have a feeling there will be.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to be
There are over.
bribing kids with candy to come.
But we had talked about
Water bottles.
coordinating with the schools to have them like write, and then like the best student or whatever gets to, like, 'cause, didn't we figure it out that it was like if each school could present like 3 times a year or something like that throughout the year?
Yeah, you have.
You have 3 elementary schools.
Right.
I guess Sea Park's not in the city, so you've got
Delora and
2.
Satellite.
Well, you've got 4 schools.
Right.
Four schools, yeah.
Yeah. So, it was twice a year. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Like if we did through the school year. So then.
And the
it would
teachers
just
could
be like-
nominate them in the beginning too.
Yeah, and they could have speech writing contests twice a year, school-wide, and,
I'll put it out to my homeschool groups.
Yeah,
There's quite a few kids in those.
yeah.
that's awesome. So,
So can I add something?
Well, actually, yeah, there's a point there, though. We said there's 4 schools. There aren't 4 schools. There's homeschool, and then there's like Montessori and the rest of them.
Well,
So
the school-
you've got,
the school where I'm
We don't have any
involved,
more
the Verde
Montessori
Eco School, I
schools.
want them to come too and present. So,
Well, we could just say, like, we have a spot per month for the city schools. That could be like our spotlight. And anytime that any other school outside of the city, homeschool, private school, anytime that they want to participate, we'll just add them in.
how about, maybe city schools get priority, like you're saying.
Mhm.
I don't know how much interest we're really going to have.
I think you're going to have to advertise to try to find enough people to come here to do it and present it. I mean, of course, Florida Virtual Charter School, there's lots of schools out there. But I think it's going to be, how are you getting the word out there to these schools I love your idea. I'm all about any age. If you can come up there, we can lower that mic down and get anybody in to come in under 18 or 19 to come in and hear it. But exactly what you said is to give them something that's tangible, that they can use. A recycling water bottle, ribbon's awesome too. But even the shirt, Roman, my son got for the garden, he got the first sustainability board shirt, and he wears that like, that thing is all beat up, but he loves that shirt, and people always ask him about that shirt too. So it's advertising that they can wear at school. So it's something that I think is awesome, is to here you get the shirt or water bottle.
think the key is to find a teacher, like, you know, like Erica Merritt, Surfside, you know, I don't know if I would be a good person to get there. I'm sure there's someone who's similarly enthusiastic at Western Holland.
Well, we have a teacher that's on the board,
Yeah,
Jody Rozicki.
right, from the council, yeah.
I mean, I'd be willing to bet that if we reached out to the schools,
Oh, yeah.
they're all going to have a handful of teachers that want to jump on this, because, of course, you want kids to be good speechwriters, you want them to be good public speakers, you want them to be civically engaged, and you want them to be, I mean, they're learning probably a lot more about sustainability at school
Right.
than we are in our, like, just general lives. So I think that there's this, I think this could go really well, especially if the schools take it and run with it. It would just kind of flow onto us. But I also wanted to add, I like what Jennifer was saying about like the water bottle. Like the rosette is a nice idea. However, it's not really sustainable in nature. Like if we had something that we could give them that they would reuse, but would also be kind of a reminder to them of like our appreciation for what they did, like a t-shirt, like a water bottle. Maybe it has like the symbol of the rosette on it and says like, you know, honored presenter at Sustainability Board, you know.
That's a cool idea, putting a rosette on a sustainable
There
item.
you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea.
I think pinning it to a shirt is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then that also helps to promote that, because then if the kids have that t-shirt on or that water bottle, they're walking around with it, it makes more people aware of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Conversation starters.
What, we have sustainability board T-shirts, right? Or do we?
Josh had made those, and, yeah. I don't have an endless supply.
I wonder, do you have any idea what it costs to get, you know, not 100 T-shirts, but, you know, like up here?
I've been told we don't have a ton of budget, just so you know.
Okay.
Maybe
Like,
$5 rosette.
pretty much nothing.
Specifically the
Back to $5 on the rosette.
I mean, I can ask, but
Maybe we could
I
find
know
someone.
we have been told,
I can understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
All right, so,
If we could find a t-shirt maker to
anyone
donate.
out of your sale, I'm really sorry.
Now, there's a thought.
Recyclable bag,
I'm thinking of Carlson.
tree.
It's in the city.
We'll go dig one up.
so,
Maker
Yeah, Carlson.
or printed.
Custom T-shirts.
If we could find someone in the city to donate.
Because if, the
Yeah.
thing is, you know, they could put Carlson's or something on it, but you could put, you know, like the Sustainability Board T-shirt, and maybe with a logo on it, but then, you know, you could put, you know, presenter or something like that, customize it.
And it's only one t-shirt a month, so it's not like you're
Yeah.
going to put them out.
Agree.
Yeah.
Gotta find a funding source.
yeah.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
to ask them to
Yeah.
donate to us.
Yeah.
Like, will you donate a t-shirt to us once a month for this program?
Right.
I think we should also have a pizza party every month. When they come in, the kids, you know, they love pizza. But just to finish it off here, I put a little preparation schedule, and I'm hoping that everybody can agree to it, so maybe we can have something organized by next month. I'd get with Nick by June 10th, kind of define rules for the speech.
June 10th?
Well, July 10th, sorry, July 10th. I got it written
Yeah.
perfectly, so July 10th, define rule, what, you're not going to be here?
No, I'm just thinking if it involves the schools, it'd be great to have the teachers involved, and it might take a little more time because it's the summer.
Sure, so,
So, I mean, I could talk to Bobby Pruitt and Chairman LeBrun from Dolores Satellite, and like you said, Jody Rozicki's at Surfside, and I can get back with you at the next meeting.
but if we have some type of rules defined on what the kids are going to come and do, I think that'd be important to present. to-
Okay, to present that then to the schools.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like by July 10th, which is 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, maybe have something written up. And then by the 17th, we'd research and contact school organizations by the 17th, and
I think you also, or Nick, contact Rozicki and Mindy also, because I think the two of them were working on something about, oh, that's what they were working on, the
Youth council.
student council,
Youth council.
but, or the youth council, whatever you call it. But this kind of jives with that to it. Again, it's tying the youth into the program.
I could commit to by the next meeting. So Levi Draheim and Denali, who presented, they're both in my home circle group. So we got 2 potential speakers there. So I could commit by next month to just going out to my circles who are not out of session right now, and just seeing, maybe they're kicking it off if it's hard to get in front of the schools.
they kick it off.
Yeah, right. 'Cause we're-
Denali's presented.
Yeah,
And
she's
really-
already presented on her experiment, and then Levi is clearly involved in a ton of things. My son's friends with him. Yeah.
And really, you know, like homeschooling,
Yeah.
you could probably run it 12 months of the year and have somebody every meeting.
Should be.
So,
Are we happy to work with you on it?
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need a motion or anything for that. We'll just, okay.
Continue it on.
But that we have that on the agenda for the next meeting to kind of fleshed out, so we're ready to,
Get it going. You can invite them in. All right.
oh, that'll be the, what, July meeting?
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
I'd suggest that the target be that August be the first presentation.
Sure, for sure. All right. Any further public comments?
Is your son ready to do it? Is he?
We'll
He
do
might be
that
the
video.
first one, right?
All right. Maybe December.
August, you better
In
get ready.
December. We'll
Right
put
there,
them on
let's
the
test
list
you
for
out.
December.
You're the guinea pig.
What?
If we have a meeting in December.
Right.
All right. Any further public comment?
Oh, yeah.
No? All right. Next agenda item. Board member comments.
Oh, I just wanted to comment, I actually did think this before I, John, when you were talking about the golf carts and the reciprocal with Indian Harbor Beach, I wondered if we were going to talk further about that, because after I went home, I realized my husband and I have talked about this quite a bit, there's no way to drive anything if you're north of the library to south of the library without going on A1A or South Patrick. How?
You go east to the library building, across the grass.
Okay, I hadn't considered that.
Or the other possibility,
You can find an automobile or a golf cart?
A golf cart.
Oh, well, yeah, you can go on the sidewalk right through there. I mean,
Can you?
Well, I mean, it's physically possible,
Okay.
right?
it's got a chain across, and then they've got the post. Now, the thing
I ride my
is,
bike through there, I skateboard
Well,
through there.
bike, yeah,
but not a golf cart.
Oh.
No.
Why can't we get the two cities together and actually make a road for safety
I've never done that.
reasons? Just
I don't have a
because
golf cart, I just
for
visualize it.
emergency vehicles to get through there, let's start with.
That's
just
the
emergency.
reason there's a chain with a padlock on it. Guess who has a key to the chain? Okay, it's never
That's
been
gonna take a
used.
long time.
Man,
Right.
that's just
They
gonna
got a
be-
pocket full of keys, they come out there and.
Well, the history is that the city 10, 15, I don't think 20 years ago, had talked about doing that.
And?
And the folks in Harbor said, we don't want traffic going for Satellite Beach down through our residential neighborhood there. Okay,
That was years ago.
I know,
Right.
that's the point. The thing is that that's one reason it came up with the idea, if the city, Courtney Barker was the planner at Titusville. Guess who was the city manager at the same time? He's now the city manager for Harbor.
Right.
Okay? So there's a natural synergy there. And probably things could be worked, especially now, if you make it reciprocal, that their folks can go from there to Atlantic Plaza, and our folks can go from here to Lowe's.
But you'd have to open that.
But you could do it
Yeah.
by just taking, they've got that series of posts that go down along.
Yeah.
You just take one of those posts and move it, so
Okay.
it's wide enough for a golf cart, and it'll take out the fenders on a car.
Oh, okay, so not a car, golf cart only. Okay.
Start
Yeah.
with green, yeah, start with a golf cart, and then we
Yes.
can maybe,
Let it,
Yeah,
let
yeah,
them get used to it.
gotcha. Okay.
And
That helps
may
me
be,
understand
you
this
know,
whole.
and I could see the conversation
I'm
eventually
trying to
going, why
visualize
just
something
golf carts,
That's
you know?
spaces. I could get through there with a jogging stroller, but I guess that's still only like,
Oh,
shoulder
God,
length,
yeah.
a little, you know?
Pedestrian or bike,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just hung up on, is there ever so much traffic on Jamaica that Indian Harbor was like, no.
Right.
That, but,
there would be, and it's all local traffic,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like it's
Never-
gonna be anybody else.
but this,
Yeah.
On a
this,
Saturday,
that's
traffic
just
in
part
Jamaica?
of the history between the city. You've got to understand that where this building is located right now
Yeah.
used to be in Harbor. But everything north of the ditch that's south of the sports park, that all 200 acres used to be part of Satellite Beach when it was incorporated. The reason it was pulled out was because Percy Hitchcock and one of the founders of Harbor had a falling out over what was going to be done. It's now Tomahawk. They wanted an industrial complex, and Percy said this is a residential city, and so they went to court. The city lost in the local court, and they lost in the Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And that poisoned the relationship for decades.
So now it's potentially time to open that. So what do you think are the next steps then? Because you brought this up last and said, let's talk about reciprocity. It stuck in my mind like, wait, it's not physically possible, but what's the next steps?
The next step probably would be for Courtney to sit down with somebody down there and say, what do you think?
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Are we involved in that as a group or?
Do we what?
The Greenway. We call it the Greenway.
It's all
It's
in the
Greenway
labeling.
Street.
Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question?
green-
Shake hands and we,
Love it.
Do they have a sustainability board down there or any type
they
of?
came here,
like,
they did, Indian Harbor Beach.
Because then like Cocoa Beach has, but they're a newer,
Where was that at? We had them.
so they don't have anything, whether they have staff, because I know Cocoa Beach, you know, it's newer, but Indian Harbor Beach has nothing at all, like.
Not that I know of.
Why, this may die, but why don't I move that the board suggest that the city leadership work with Harbor on the idea of golf cart reciprocity between the two cities so folks can get from Harbor to the schools and from here to, we've got everybody, I think, that lives south of DeSoto, their kids go to the school in Harbor.
You go to Sea Park.
Seaport.
Ocean Breeze.
So there's.
Ocean Breeze from there.
Whatever. So the point is that there's mutual reasons for wanting to open something up.
Yeah.
Raise the issue. And if she comes back and says, number one, she doesn't want to do it, that's fine. I think if we suggest it, she'll say yes. And if they come back and say, you know, stuff it, then
Yeah.
that's it. So I'll move that we suggest that Courtney.
Yeah.
No motion?
No motion, okay.
No motion.
That's good, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
well, before the board does quit for this evening, I wanted to introduce Lexi.
Oh my gosh, you waited here.
I know, the whole time.
I thought it was important to be here anyway. I mean, sustainability has been a passion of mine for the past 8 years. So as Nick said, my name's Lexi, Lexi Miller. My formal name is Alexis, but you can call me Lexi. I'm the new project manager for the city of Satellite Beach. I've been here, this is my 4th week, so 3.5 weeks. I'm learning a lot, which is awesome, and like I said, I was here because I think it's important to be here and listen to what the Sustainability Board is talking about and discussing and the decisions that they're making. I really look forward to being a part of Sustainable Satellite, and what I do. A lot of my responsibilities are going to revolve around stormwater management, muck dredging, and then special projects just kind of as they come my way, as well as stormwater reporting. So I look forward to doing all of those things alongside the goals of the Sustainability Board and the overarching goals of the city, and it's kind of serving our really cool residents and our really cool community. So.
Thanks, welcome.
I've never heard ask a dumb question. Can you just tell, like, 30,000, what does your job entail?
30,000?
Yeah, 30,000 feet, you know, what exactly is your role as project manager for the city?
So my role at the moment is still kind of being defined. So right now, I'm going to be handling all of the new stormwater projects, so not necessarily the maintenance, that's still going to fall on Public Works, but project generation and idea generation, and then I'll be working with Courtney and Liz for funding for those, depending on the needs of the city, as well as reporting for stormwater. So through FDEP and NPDES, there's some reporting that's required for us to be in compliance for our different phases of our MS4, which is our municipal separate stormwater sewage system. And so we have it has to do with TMDLs and those nutrient loads that are going to the lagoon and things like that. And then I'll also be overseeing the Satellite Beach portion of the dredging for the canal once the county kind of makes their way from Piney to Causeway down south. That'll be about 2 or 3 years out. So I'm just helping generate that now with Courtney as well.
And what's your kind of professional educational background?
I got my civil engineering degree from Florida Tech for a bachelor's, and then for my master's, I got a interdisciplinary sciences degree as well as an energy systems certificate, which is kind of like a minor, but for grad students.
Very cool.
So,
Great.
yeah, lots of really cool experience.
Did you not work on the sustainability action?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did do that as well. I worked alongside Zach and Dr. Lindemann for the Sustainability Action Plan. Actually made a lot of the recycling signage around the city, too. I had made it for Florida Tech, and Zach was like, we could use that. And so I just swapped out some logos. Up until I graduated, I was working on the new zero energy building that's being designed on the Florida Tech campus. Most of my research there was on envelope materials, so how do we create a more thermally insulative and less thermally conductive building space, you know, for efficiency, because HVAC is a huge component of commercial buildings in Florida, mainly, you know, cooling. Some solar stuff, some LEED stuff, a little bit of xeriscaping research, not anywhere near as professional as Nick, not nearly as much knowledge as Nick has. And then my other background with FIT was I was a resident director, so I did a lot of serving students in the same way that city employees serve their residents, so a little bit of experience with that as well.
Great.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm around if you guys have any questions.
We're so glad you're around.
Me too.
All right. I got a few more things to say. A few more things. Sorry, I know you guys have been here all day. The Verde Eco School is doing, they're doing a big event for a national night out, August 6th. They're going to be doing a big, they're going to be shutting down the town square at EGAD. And the police are going to be involved. They're going to pay for a band to come in. They're going to pay for blocking the streets and so forth. And the school has asked me to organize a bike ride from Satellite Beach over to that area at EGAD for also a bike rodeo of sorts over there, bike safety and so forth. So I'd just like to ask your blessing, permission to do that, to be a part of that, and also use the logo, the Sustainability Board logo, as kind of a sponsor of that event.
Consensus?
Yeah? Okay, great. So I'll pass on the logo to him and help with the organization of the bike ride. Another thing,
Are you going to have a police escort on
I could possibly.
And one condition, if we actually think about changing our logo just a little bit, just the thought of it, just put it out there. I'm just putting it out there.
City logo?
No.
I love the city logo so much.
Not our city logo. Our sustainability
I honestly
board
can't remember how bad it was.
logo. I'm sorry.
One quick.
Take a look at it.
I want to talk about
We
comments.
I love the city logo, you should use that.
Yeah,
There it
for
is.
sure.
Oh, okay.
The library garden. 2 months ago, before Dave left, we were talking about the garden and getting back out there for the barrels and so forth. I just wanted to know, has Dave done anything? Because it's looking pretty good to me. I went over there. Yeah, the library is looking really good.
So it's doing well. I did talk to Public Works about making a few adjustments to the downspouts, and one of the rain barrels did break, and I have to fix that. So it looks
So you're charging that?
Yeah,
on?
yeah, I'm on it.
We don't need any extra bodies on that, no.
No, it's really good. I appreciate that.
Okay, cool. I also wanted to bring it to your attention that, and you know, of course, Long Doggers is doing a golf cart meetup now. So I know we talked about doing a golf cart meetup here and how that might be interesting, to do a golf cart meetup just like I'm doing the bike thing. But Long Doggers is actually doing that, and that's a pretty cool thing. So I don't know how we could be involved with that, but just want to bring that to everybody's attention that they are doing something. Yeah.
Well, then support it through the
Facebook?
Facebook and stuff.
Send me a link.
All right. We'll work on a link. You probably see him more than I do. And that's all I have on my little notes here. Any further public comment?
Does Long Doggers have a opening date set?
You mean doubles?
Doubles, yes.
Somewhere within the next 90 to 120 days. Ballpark.
It's a range.
Any further public comment? All right, no? All right, next order of business, agenda items for the next meeting.
We have a lot of them.
We have a lot. You have them written down?
Yes, so we'll talk about some speakers. I'll make a list of that. Any other things? I'll look into the fertilizer question that John had raised, and I'll report back to you on that. And we'll look at the kids presenting and report back to you on that.
Isn't Hannah, or is it Julie?
You coming?
Your interns, aren't they coming to speak on the fertilizer?
Hannah may, depending on Courtney's approval, talk about GAT 19.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And our progress with that in our direction.
All right. I wanted to add on to the agenda items, resiliency planning. We talked a little bit about that and how we might get involved. Is there something you could talk to us about?
Yeah, I mean, the next thing with resiliency planning is I'll be attending the ACCO in Orlando, and that's in August and in September. And it'll be part of an accreditation to get some more information about sustainability and resiliency. And if anybody else wants to be aware of that, I can send information about that. I was sent out to city staff.
Is that with flooding? Is it flooding resiliency?
It's resiliency planning, so it has everything to do with, sea level rise, climate change, and infrastructure adaptations, and policy changes, code changes, and everything that has to do with, our city specifically. And Courtney's got it presented on, what we're doing to numerous different, boards, groups, meetings, symposiums. And if you want to be made more aware of the next regional planning council meetings, I'll make sure that, we send out info.
So that should be an item for August then, maybe an agenda item for August to talk about what you learned and so forth.
Sure, yeah.
Actually, that reminds me, it's still the 21st is the workshop on the Stetson project, right? 6 o'clock, August?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't memorize.
That I believe it's now scheduled for the 21st of August. There's going to be a workshop with City Council on the 3-year-long Stetson project, the results. And I think what the board would find very interesting is that 2 attorneys put together a whole package of recommended policies dealing with adaptation and implementing in the city code and how we do things. Instead of, putting in pumps and seawalls and stuff. There's other ways to deal with it. And I think folks may find that. I'm really looking forward to that meeting because I think it's going to be incredibly interesting. It's right down our road.
Lastly, over the next month, I'd really like to get more involved with you on this seagrass issue. and our stance. I'd like to harden that up a little bit more, so.
You from the board's
Yeah,
stance?
from the board's perspective and our stance and how we're
As
approaching it.
city staff, I'll recommend the seagrasses are good. Plant them and protect
Grass
them.
is not good. All grass is good.
And and
No, I mean,
I wouldn't hear all of it.
I know. But we've been talking about manatees, we've been talking about all this stuff, and I know seagrass is good, and that doing the project is good, but.
I'll also say that, protecting shorelines and reducing erosion and to create stable environments where seagrasses can take hold is also very important as well.
Yeah,
We could talk all about that. Yeah.
right, related to the sort of tiered priorities like language and action steps, and, yeah.
Okay, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure, hey.
All right, any further public comment? No? Okay. Adoption of minutes from May 22nd, 2019.
So move.
Second.
David Gliotti?
Yes.
Jennifer Schroeder?
Yes.
Mark Boyd?
Yes.
John Curtis?
Yes.
Chris Reed?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any further public comments? No? All right, that's the adjournment. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Great job.
Sorry it was so late.
Great job.
No.